Good evening. I call to order the November 7, 2016 work session of Swarthmore Borough Council. All members, save Mr. Murphy, are not present, but I expect him. The mayor is present.
I think Mr. Murphy called and said he was not here tonight. Yes.
Mr. Murphy called and said he would not be here, so what you see is what you get. The mayor would like to make a presentation to Eagle Scouts.
I would like to, thank you, David. I'd like to invite Peter, John, and Jonathan to come up.
Welcome.
This is Borough Council. Say hi.
Hi.
So there are times, as the mayor, when we get to celebrate certain things about our community. And hey guys, turn on to the TV, guys. And there are, we have the great fortune of having scouts in our community who do tremendous things that really help, in their own way to build community and build this idea of what we're all trying to do. Why, the reasons why we live here and why we love living here. And they have. These are 3 projects that have been completed in the last, when did you finish, last year?
March.
In March, so in the last year. And they're wide-ranging. Peter took it upon himself to actually pretty much reconstruct the cinder track that's down at the Rutgers Avenue School, which, was quite an undertaking and lasted quite a long time. You had some help, I think, right?
Yeah.
And it got to drive some semi-heavy machinery around, right? And build the whole thing. But it's really, the track is a cinder track. It's one of those things that gets used tremendously by people in the community, and it was really in sad shape before he took it on. John, the tall one down the end, he attacked Little Crumb Creek, not attacked, but he supplemented Little Crumb Creek, I think, in a way where he took a look at it, he tried to figure out what was kind of missing and what would help it make it more of a people's park, and he constructed benches and picnic tables and what else?
Well, that was it.
That's right, benches and picnic tables, to give people places to sit, people to occupy the park, so it's a real sort of, that sort of public ideal. And then Jonathan, who's in the middle, actually worked with my office and with the Centennial Foundation, and literally constructed the shed for the Horticultural Society, which is out in the middle of Central Park. And right now it's the only thing we have in town that actually says Swarthmore on it, that's out in the Central Park thing. And as an architect, I can say that the craftsmanship was really first class. One of the things that I love about these Eagle Scout projects too is that it's an opportunity where young men get to work with their fathers and with their leaders and really sort of, it's this passing along of skills and this passing along of commitment and this idea of taking on a huge undertaking and completing it successfully. And so what I have, every once in a while I give out these things. This is a volunteer service award. So the first one says, the mayor representing the grateful people of Swarthmore recognizes and applauds the volunteer spirit and commitment of Peter Armour, whose extraordinary dedication and service on the Cinder Track Restoration Eagle Scout project has revitalized the beloved and well-used borough asset. Peter's example is the epitome of community service and serves as a model for the volunteerism that's required if we want our town to be a vibrant and living community. A grateful borough is in your debt. Well done. And it's signed, Tim Carney, Mayor of Swarthmore. John Crawford. John Crawford's extraordinary dedication and service on its Little Crumb Creek Eagle Scout project provided the borough with the beautiful and useful additions to our public park. John's examples of epitome of community service, the same kind as last time. Vibrant living community, grateful boroughs in your debt. Well done. Thank you very much. And for Jonathan Cresson, extraordinary dedication service on the Central Park Horticultural Shed Eagle Scout project. Provide the borough with a beautiful and useful structure. The borough's in your debt, John. Anybody want to take a picture?
The press wants to take a picture as well. While that's being done, I note
Can we add
that
the 2 Scoutmasters too? Please.
We could.
the Neckerchiefs say they are Troop 112.
And they are. Congratulations.
They did all the hard work.
Yeah, no, I don't think they did all of it. Maybe not.
I'm sorry.
You guys should be very proud. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done. We in Borough Council echo the comments of the mayor and extend our congratulations to you and to your Scoutmaster.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And while we still have a few, I just wanted to say before we get to public comment, it may have escaped your notice that tomorrow is an election day in the United States of America. And in Pennsylvania, there is at least, it's easy if you're voting to forget that there's a question at the top of the ballot. And there's at least one question on this ballot that all those who are eligible to vote should vote on, which is there's been a lot of litigation over how the question was formulated. It would extend the years where a judge at any level in this state could serve to the age of 75. That age presently is 70, and it's not obvious from the question as framed that the effect of the question would be to increase the number of years that a judge in this state, whether common pleas, superior court, commonwealth court, or Supreme Court, could serve extended from 70 to 75. But that, I don't know if there are any other questions, but that's a question that is on the ballot, and you want to make sure that you vote on that as on any other questions, as well as the many chances you have to vote for individuals for different offices in Commonwealth. Okay, thank you all. Now we're going to move to public comment. Those who were here for the presentation are welcome to stay. It'll be a riveting meeting. You'll enjoy every moment, but you're equally free to depart. So public comment. I see the former mayor, Guy Smith, present.
I feel so very public. Good evening, I'm Guy Smith. I live on Swarthmore Avenue, I think. I've lived in 7 houses here in town. I keep getting told to move, but I'm hoping to stay there for a while. I consider myself among the most fortunate of people for many reasons, one of which is just what I saw here tonight. Having been a member of that Boy Scout troop starting in 1954 and never coming close to being a Eagle Scout. But I'm here representing the Centennial Foundation for a very brief moment. And that is to thank everybody here at the council table and Jane, our absolutely incredible borough manager, and our mayor, for everything that everybody did to make this Central Park project come to fruition. I think there are very few places where I can say that sort of the private sector and the public sector get together and work so well together and work so hard to make something like this that I think is just a wonderful project come to fruition. And so with my thanks as a member of the Centennial Foundation on behalf of the foundation, I wish this was some sort of a major present I could give to all of you, but it is simply a certificate of recognition, many of which you have signed. It contains a small piece of the ceremonial ribbon that was cut on the 4th of July, and many of you have signed this. Our mayor has signed it. David, I know you signed it. And would you see to it that our missing guest gets one as well? And it's just a small thank you from the foundation to all of you, knowing how wonderful this happens.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you very much. Looking at the certificate, the name of the park should have been in French, but that's... Any other public comment tonight on any subject of interest to the borough? If you wish to address us on a subject, come to the rostrum, state your name and your street address, and let us hear from you.
My name is Annie Fox, and I live at 1 Kenyon Avenue. I'm here to express concerns about the Mariner East pipeline. It has not been sufficiently studied. We don't know what kind of impact it's going to have on our community. It could conceivably have a leak that would affect our watershed and our water quality. I don't believe we have any plan to deal with that if it does happen. And so I'm asking the borough to pass the resolution of concern and to ask for further study. And also, beyond just saying that we don't want it in our backyards, I think we need to express that if this pipeline is dangerous, if it is a danger that can have explosions, particularly near a school, because it passes very close to an elementary school, that maybe it shouldn't be in anyone's backyard. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a form of resolution that we will be considering this evening on that subject. Anybody else wishes to address us tonight on any subject? If not, we'll move into our agenda. I've made the comment I wish to make, and that is to encourage everyone to vote and not to miss the question. Or any, as I say, I'm aware of one question, there may be others, but they're easily missed. I don't know how many times I've gone home and said, there was a question at the top of that ballot, but I never voted. So we move now to the report of the Environment Committee. Mara.
Good evening. Tonight, the council has before it a resolution that's called a resolution of concern, and it does regard the Mariner East 2 pipeline. And a copy was put on the borough website today, and I believe there are some copies. Jane, do you have copies for the audience?
I don't know.
Okay, all right. Okay, Borough has had copies to look at for a few days. And this is to express concern about safety on the pipeline, and it's not anti-pipeline, it's just asking specifically that the Department of Environmental Protection provide an extension of the comment period for 60 days, and to have a public meeting in Delaware County for Delaware County residents. They've had one in Chester County, and to just express that we could be affected by an explosion or a leak, and the edge of the evacuation zone for the pipeline, the closest part to us would be just very close. So it's a 3-mile evacuation zone from the pipeline, and we're just a little bit over 3 miles away from that part in Aston. And if you'll read it, it asks for an evacuation plan, first responder plan, just some things to make it safe, because it is a much more volatile substance that's in it than a regular gas pipeline. It's a liquid in the pipeline, and then it just quickly, when it leaks, it becomes a very dense gas, and it can ignite just with a cell phone. At this point, we should just talk about it and talk about your responses to it. And it gets, just before you start, it gets sent to the DEP, and we're hoping to vote for it tonight. If that's not possible, it could be next week, but just because the proposal is due, this new version of it is due from Sunoco, it was due today to the DEP, and we sort of want to have the response as soon as possible. Yes.
We have a suggestion from our solicitor who has reviewed it at our request. And with respect to section 1 of it, it presently states Swarthmore Borough, Delaware County declares itself an interested party in all proceedings before and in all county, state, federal, etc. And our solicitor observes that Intervening in a legal proceeding will not be accomplished by passage of this resolution. It will require the filing of a notice to intervene or similar pleading. Perhaps the resolution should instead state, Swarthmore Borough, Delaware County reserves the right to intervene as an interested party in all, and then carry on from there. So I suggest, rather than having a discussion only, I'd ask whether, subject to that recommended alteration of the wording, are you prepared to move its adoption tonight? We don't have to wait for a legislative session to adopt it. Is that a yes?
Yes.
You so moved?
Yeah, I so moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Now, is there any discussion on whether we should adopt this resolution with the suggested change? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the resolution with that change, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution with that change is adopted.
Thank you very much.
Does the Environment Committee have anything else for us this evening?
We don't, I think that's enough.
I think maybe we could note that the EAC just applied for and received a $500 tree vitalize grant, and I believe it's going to be used for stream bank restoration in Little Hungary.
Yeah, that's great. That just
That's
happened
great.
today.
That's very fast.
Okay, thank
The
you.
funder is, who's the funder?
The Delaware County Conservation District.
It's actually a part of the Delaware County government, Delaware County Conservation District. All counties in Pennsylvania, I believe, have a conservation district.
What's the original source of money, the feds or the state?
I would guess it's growing green money, would be my guess, which is state. DEP money.
Finance, Michael?
Yes, and both items will be one and the same because the committee meeting really was all about the budget. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at the updated memorandum that was sent out. It was authored by Jane and it was talked about extensively in the Finance Committee meeting. So I think just a couple of big picture things, and we can get into any of the details as we see fit. But I think from a big picture point of view, we're very fortunate. The borough financially is doing well. We've benefited a lot from what's happened with the college and the building. Also with parking and other things, the revenues have been strong, and all credit to Jane that the expenses of the borough, as much as she can control those, have been kept under control. So our financial position is quite strong. And as we went through, after reviewing what the recommendations were, and they're all laid out in front of you, we've essentially come to a pretty hefty fund balance, even with everything funded. That's approximately 9% of revenues for the borough. And that includes no tax increase. So I think we're the beneficiary of, as much of the building that's happening. In theory, residents are benefiting to some extent because typically their taxes are increased. We're suggesting none. And with a healthy fund balance of about 9% of revenues, and some of the thought is eventually to use that to pay down some of the debt of the borough over time. But from a budgetary standpoint, that's where we stand now. The recommendations, just to quickly go over what the committees have recommended, the Swarthmore Public Library going from currently $146,000 to $159,140. A net increase in contribution to the Swarthmore Town Center from $20,000 to $22,000. And new funding for Swarthmore Senior Support, $5,000 to the public library and $5,000 to SRA. And then finally, public safety, which has been much discussed, a crossing guard at Yale and Rutgers Avenue, costing $7,000. And all of those would add $32,140 to the budget as currently constructed, or from the previous budget. And that previous budget we're utilizing $29,000 of the fund balance. So if you combine those two together, we would be utilizing $61,140 of the fund balance that we have currently to make this particular year's budget balance. Again, assuming that we agree on all of those things. And then finally, just it's important to note that what's baked into some of these numbers, and we can get into line items if anybody wants to, but by contract, the police are given a 3.5% raise. And in the budget now is a 2% raise for non-uniformed employees, which is not set by contract, it's set by us. But that was a number that the Finance Committee was comfortable with. Since David Murphy's not here, he has heard back that from the Public Works Department that they were looking for a 3% increase as opposed to the 2% that's been budgeted in here. So I think it's something to be discussed. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that in the Finance Committee, how the timing of that will be, but I want that to be out in the open as well. So those are the basic framework of the budget. I think I'll stop now. I'm just happy to answer questions or have discussion or things that weren't clear from what I said in the memo.
The budget process, we would next week adopt this as we required by law to as a preliminary budget.
I think if I understand it correctly, we have to vote on the potential tax increase or not tax increase, but the actual line items can change all the way to the end of the year. So I think what really I'm going to be proposing next week would be no tax increase. Just keep the taxes the same as last year. But the actual budget items, I think we would.
We do advertise it by, just by the fund. So there'll be general fund, it's just expenditures, okay, listed, and that can't be changed.
And the budget can change, as Michael said, till the end of the year, but the tax needs to be adopted by ordinance every year. Ordinance has to be advertised at least 7 days in advance. So you need to hit on your tax rate and stick with it in advance of the final meeting.
Okay.
So I mean, what I would say in summary is that I think myself and the Finance Committee is very comfortable with no tax increase given the cushion we have in the fund balance.
All right. Any questions or comments? Yes.
I wanted to make one comment about something that, Mike, I think that you've done right in this process, because you have emphasized, and Jane, you have also, that the finances this year were relatively good, largely because of kind of a one-time bump, because of things happening with the inn and various things.
Yeah.
And I did take that PSAB course this past year, and I was listening, and they were saying, you know, all of you boroughs, when you're doing your budgets, make sure that you emphasize that people understand that if you have a one-time bump, that you don't make it look like this is built into the budget going forward forever and ever, and I think you've handled it exactly right on this. So,
well, thank you for bringing that up. I think that is an important point. This is one time in nature.
And if you'll look, given the strong fund balance, one of the things that you can do is do something with your money that will reduce future expenditures, which is hard to do because most of your expenditures are personnel. But by paying down some debt, taking $100,000 out of money that's basically sitting in the bank right now and paying down about $50,000 worth of debt for the next 2 years, you have more tax money that you don't need to raise because you paid it down with the one time.
yes.
And just so people are aware, the exact number's not in front of me, but roughly the amount of debt that the borough has is about 1.9 million, correct? Does that sound right? Just to keep it in perspective. In theory, our fund balance will be about $450,000. So we do, you know.
For those who,
Yeah, about 1.9.
Yeah, 1.9.
another word that's in other contexts people would use to describe a fund balance is a reserve.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
And we strive for, and it's recommended typically for boroughs and townships to be between 5 and 10%, and this would put us at about 9%, which is a bit higher than what we would probably target of 7.5%, and I think we'll, depending on how things come together at the end of the year, again, things like debt reduction will be part of the plan, but as it relates to the budget specifically, that's the number that we end up with.
Anything else, Michael?
No.
Any other questions about the budget in its present form? Okay, thank you. General government?
We had our meeting on October 17th, and Mike has really reported on what the outcome of that meeting was in terms of the recommendations for the various groups. And I'll just mention again that you know, there was, the new item for this year was the Aging in Place Task Force, and there were Aging in Place people who had requested money. There is money provided here. It's in the nature of 2 grants, and those are one-year grants, and so we felt it was appropriate this year to make those allocations to the library and to SRA. SRA had an article in the newspaper about how they wanted to emphasize senior programming. It seems like a great organization to do that. And we can revisit this in next year's budget also and tweak it in whichever way will best serve things. But we hope that the public will give input to the library and SRA on how they might want the library and SRA to focus using these grants. And then the only other thing I'll mention is that we are scheduled to have a meeting in November, and that's scheduled for November 21 at 8:30 in the morning. And that's all I have to report.
Lauren, will the Environment Committee be meeting in November?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Finance Committee will be.
Okay. And Ross, I think, I'm not sure if you made clear, but the logic of a $5,000 add-on to what was otherwise recommended to be granted to the library and SRA was to make transparent the actual use of the money for senior purposes as opposed to simply raising their allocation by undifferentiated by $5,000 in each case.
Correct. They're separate line items in the budget. They're not increases to those organizations' regular budgets. They're separate line items.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Planning and zoning, Mary?
We did not meet last month, and I do not think we're going to be meeting this month either, but I just wanted to give an update that the zoning hearing board did convene last month for the application for a special exception for the property at 11 Dartmouth to find out if they could be a bed and breakfast. And I understand, because I did not attend that evening, that that was granted, but there is still some work to be done or some conditions imposed about 4 or 6 off-street parking spaces.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention is the Planning Commission will meet next Wednesday night to consider again the BEP building that's being proposed by the college. And Jane, it's still preliminary, isn't it? This is their second time coming with their preliminary land development proposal.
Will you meet this month?
I don't think
No,
so.
you said you would not meet this month. Public safety, David?
Thank you.
Right. I think we've already talked about the budget increases for both uniformed and non-uniformed employees, so I won't go over that again. And then with respect to the fire company, we've also, I believe, discussed that, including the $90,000 contribution we'll be getting from Swarthmore College for the volunteer fire company. Last month's meeting, Public Safety Committee meeting, really focused on, a little bit of feedback here, really focused on the crossing guard situation at Rutgers and Yale. We've approved that. The $7,000 for that, Mike's already discussed, is in the budget. And we'll be meeting again this month. That will be Tuesday, November 15th, 7:30 p.m.
Okay, there had been a question raised with respect to the crossing guard that,
Yes.
that whereas kids might be expected to go to school at more or less the same time.
Right.
And so when that half hour when the crossing guard would be there, and that has to be worked out given the distance to school, but that they might not all come back en masse. And I was curious as to whether there's going to be any contemporaneous study of any kind to decide how in fact they do come back and whether or not there would in fact be a crossing guard there in the afternoon.
Well, the $7,000 allocation contemplates there would be a crossing guard there both morning and afternoon, but you raise a very valid point. The window in the morning, I think, is a pretty well-defined half-hour window. In the afternoon, there could very well be a lot of variation there. So I think that's something that I think we're probably going to have to make a decision and then figure out whether or not that works.
I had one question in terms of vehicle speed on Yale Avenue.
Yes.
I think we approved on the recommendation of your committee, potential 4-stage program, each stage being evaluated at its completion to see whether to go on to the next stage. And the first stage was the 2 new speed indicators. And so at what point will an evaluation be done, and will that go back to your committee, or will that go to the traffic advisory committee? The results of that.
Right, I think the results of that really, probably in the first instance, should go to the Traffic Advisory Committee, because that's the committee that really came up with the recommendations, which were then passed on to Public Safety and to Council. But the, Jane, are both signs up on Yale now? That's what I thought. So we've got them going in both directions, and I certainly notice it when I drive by both ways. I think it does have an effect. And then the question would be whether or not we would move to phase 2. Phase 2 would be, I don't know whether they're properly called speed bumps or speed humps or speed cushions, but it's something like that would be put in an appropriate place on Yale Avenue to slow traffic. I think generally heading westbound on Yale, but it would be both sides of the street. And then the third phase would be the bump outs at the intersection of Dickinson and Yale. I think we need to give the this is your speed sign or speed indicator signs a little bit of time to see what kind of impact they're having.
Okay, great.
We'll measure that, we can ask the police to monitor.
David, on the crossing guard, what's the process now that's been approved? And
We have to find a crossing guard.
So
Chief Craig, Police Chief Craig is
has he been directed to?
Yeah, he has been, and he's has a couple of leads, I think. But it's not as easy as you might think to find a crossing guard, just because of the unusual hours and obviously limited amount of
No, I just think it's important that people understand.
Right.
There's a process going on.
Yes, Chief Craig is
moving forward, and that as soon as we,
yes.
am I correct in saying that as soon as we find a suitable person, that person will be trained and then
Right.
and then.
We're not waiting until the budget?
Sorry.
It's not budgeted until January.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
It's not budgeted until January 1.
So it'll be next year after the holidays.
Certainly January
Okay.
1, but if the money were available, it wouldn't be a lot of money for the month of
Right.
December, basically. So if we could find someone in December, we might start it. That's something that
I think it's worth.
Yes.
doing. I think it's.
yeah, and that I think we agreed on.
Does the chief know that?
He does. I mean, I've said it to him.
Okay.
So
I'm meeting him tomorrow, so.
Great.
well,
Reinforce it.
yeah, sure. Can be a good thing to bring up, but I know he's looking. Yeah.
All right, thank you, David.
Jane, or anybody else, any other business for us tonight? Mayor, anything else tonight?
Just to echo your comments that voting is a great opportunity for everybody. Everybody should take advantage of it. Polls are open early. They will open at 7 and close at 8, I believe, right? So get out there and vote.
Okay. Another opportunity for public comment. If anybody wants to address us on any subject at all relevant to the borough? Seeing none, hearing none. Jane, Borough Manager, any report?
No, nothing for me.
Mr. Solicitor?
Thank you, nothing tonight.
Okay. In Mr. Murphy's absence, see, only 2 people are allowed to move to adjourn here. I did it for 6 years. Oh, excuse me. We need to go into executive session for a short time, and then we will come back here, but you're all, there'll be no other public business conducted after that executive session, so you're all free to clear the room.
I think that's on our personnel matter.
On a personnel matter, yes.